Greetings to one and all. Hope you're all safe. This is Madhav Agarwal, your host for the evening. Welcome to the second webinar in the Synapse series by NITTSAC and the Sports Council. Today, we are honored to have with us Mr. Harish Balachandran, an NITT alumnus of 2008. He is the founder of HarrysFMS and a certified physical trainer by the National Academy of Sports Medicine. It is an honor to have you today with us, sir.
Hey Madhav, thanks a lot. Right, so it's really great to be here. This is something you guys have set up since a year, I suppose, the NITT SAC thing. Right, so it's something which was missing a long time back. It's good that you guys have started this, and I'm really happy to be here sharing whatever you guys have.
So let's get started, sir.
Yeah.
My first question, the first question that pops to my mind is that, what made you choose this career? What inspired you to switch to this field, and how has the journey been like?
Yeah, it's a pretty long journey. I mean, it's been over a decade that I've been exploring a lot of things over the last 10 years. And I feel that it's the reflections that I have over these last 10 years has been something instrumental in what I do today. So I'm going to probably share a quick screen, like a
Sure.
PPT with you, which is going to probably summarize the entire reflection over the past.
Definitely, sir.
Right, so okay, so here we go. You can see the screen, right?
Yep, I can see it now.
All right, let's start. All right, so I mean, as a childhood, I was pretty outdoors, right? So doing all the things indoors and outdoors, learning a lot of things through activities. So sports and competitions are something that always kind of like energized me to do things, and I was always with friends around, right? So from there, kind of like everything changed as you get serious with your studies. So I started focusing a lot more on studies, and obviously I was playing a lot because of the mother's food over there. If you see my mother's background, uh, I kind of like became that, right? So until 12th grade, all of a sudden, like I gained a lot of weight, too much of sitting, right? Not moving around a lot, plus a lot of pampered food made me to look like that, right? So and it was kind of a shock for me, right? And I was always currently bullied most of the times, right? So that was kind of hard on me. Right? So what happened later on is basically that um, I've kind of like moved on, right? So somehow kind of became like studied hard and we got into the NIDT, right? So in 2004. So suddenly what happened was this, right? So all the activities kind of continued. I was good with sports. I kind of joined swimming. I was part of NCC. All of that happened. Plus our amazing food in our mess turned me to become like this, right? So, but something during that time kind of happened, which kind of stood out during that time. That was the one of the biggest reflections I've had is that 2008 kind of that tsunami that happened back in Nagapattinam and those coastal areas. That is where kind of like through NCC we were supposed to with the NSS we were about to go to the relief camp and kind of help the kids out there. So that's where something I went and like I could see the kids smiling all the time, right? So that's where I could feel that I guess like I need to work with people a lot more because that makes me really happy. And by end of the fourth year in my college, I was donating all the stuff around, right? So I mean, my computer, all of those things from that time, from that moment, I don't know, like I kind of triggered and I started donating all of the stuff. And at the same time, obviously, like I started training at the gym. Right? I used to swim. I was part of like most of the sports, but not really good at each of one of them. And of course, right, there were no girlfriend. I didn't have anyone during our college days. But yeah, I mean, this body image kind of came in, right? So the body image is something like which most of the people in today's world kind of go through it. Once you have that kind of a plumpy physique and things like that, and then you kind of suddenly lose the weight, you generally tend to feel that you are great, and you kind of like get a lot more attentions around people, which I feel is a problem too, right? So that I didn't understand it back then, all right? So but these are the things that stood out, and this was still engineering. I kind of like was still not sure what should I be doing in my career and all, but these were the learnings that I had. Okay, I gotta like help people, and probably this body image and being fit and things is probably helpful. All of these things were something lingering around my mind, right? So later on, I got into Capgemini. I started working there, but I was really, really sad, right? I kind of didn't like the job over there. So I was constantly looking for some changes. So that's when I met my wife. But yeah, during that phase, kind of she came into my life, and then something triggered in me. The key part was that uh, I gotta like do something about my life, right? The quarter life crisis kind of came in, and I wanted to do something different than what my boss was doing currently in the company. That's when I started exploring and volunteering for NGOs and things like that, right? And being in IT company, I had a very good circle of friends who are into fitness, but it was all mostly eating food to kind of like, let's say if I want to get good physique, I kind of start eating chicken, all the broccoli and all of those things. It's kind of like all or nothing mentality, we call it. So I used to work out like crazy and then eat chicken all the time. And suddenly, if I'm not able to do it, I used to feel guilty. And that's where the yo-yo dieting came in picture. All right. So, which was pretty sad. Right. So I didn't kind of like it, but still because of the quarter life crisis and all of that, I was still not figuring out what I really do want to do long term. So all of that led to me doing like this yo-yo dieting, going in, coming out, losing a bunch of weight, gaining the fat again, right? So that was pretty tough for me. Um, then slowly, the amazing thing happened. I just kind of like explored a lot about Teach for India. So Teach for India is a fellowship for 2 years where you kind of start impacting people, right? So I joined the fellowship. It was amazing time. During that time is where I felt that I gotta like work with people, right? So I gotta coach people, I gotta work with people, see them get better. So that's where I found the passion of okay, teaching is something that I kind of like, right? So fellowship went on amazingly well. I came out of the fellowship, and suddenly again out of the fellowship, this is what I looked like because I stopped taking care of myself, right? So, but the teaching part was good, passionate teacher, all of that was good. But again, I was not into fitness at all during those 2 years. So that's resulted again. I kind of like, if you see, I get gained of weight, right? So then 2015, a lot of thing happened, right? So after the fellowship, this is what something happened. I was playing badminton, like I said, all or nothing. I started playing. I started like smashing, doing all sorts of things, and I twisted my ankle. I was a little overweight that time. Twisted my ankle, got a really bad injury at my hip and my ankle. So that's when things kind of like started getting like reality struck me. I felt that okay, there isn't enough information about nutrition and training which caters to my specific needs, right? So, and that was something shocking to me. And since then, I kind of joined another project after Teach for India. I was working there for 3 years, but I was not really happy, and I kind of like studied a lot more. I took a sabbatical back in 2008 and just quit the job, and I started reading a year about nutrition, fitness, and started training for myself, right? And I learned a lot more. And the key thing that I learned was I gotta like customize it for the person in front of me, right? And I liked coaching and talking to people, so I wanted to tie all these things together, and that's the breakthrough happened. So the kind of that breakthrough happened, and I was able to transform myself. I started reading a lot, right? So doing a couple of certifications. Then the body image thing and all vanished because I knew the structure to do it. I started helping people, right? So finally, I would say these are kind of the things that I learned over these last decade, which has probably allowed me to start an organization on my own to help people, right? So today, this is what I do, right? So it's all about sustained behavior change for building a great habits
Wow.
around nutrition and fitness. Yeah, that's all. Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing, and we're going to start off with all the
Wow,
questions
sir,
that you guys have.
that is an amazing journey, starting from
Thanks a
where
lot,
you've
man.
come to see where you are right now. This is an inspiration definitely for those everybody who's watching. So, sir, definitely like during this journey, there would have been a lot of obstacles that you would have faced.
Correct.
So, how did you face them, and what sort of obstacles did you face during this?
Right. So the key part would be like I was not satisfied with the corporate job. I could automatically the
Hmm.
minute I joined IT, I wasn't like really keen on like building a product for someone else, right? So that's where the idea of me exploring in other NGOs had started. So the minute I started doing that, I was so passionate about and like I wanted to get into this Teach for India. That was the biggest like obstacle for me. Like getting working for NIT for 5 years and kind of leaving that and getting into an NGO, working, trying to understand yourself was the biggest obstacle I would say, right? So and that was a pretty calculated risk I would say. How I overcame it, I got married to, like I showed you, a really good wife who could really understand me on what I want to achieve in the future and like kind of allowed me to explore that, right? So our parents didn't understand it in the initial time, but over time, as I started teaching and you could see the results with the kids that I taught. So that's where people things started falling in picture, and I kind of like was able to somehow convince people, and that was one of the biggest obstacles. And the second one is this, like what I'm doing now. It's damn scary for everyone around me because the pandemic has not really helped the fitness industry a lot. If you look at it, right, be it like sports person, whatever, right? So it is pretty hard on people. But yeah, that risk taking kind of pedigree probably came in with Teach for India, and after that, I'm kind of like taking the risk a little calculated, but I know what I'm doing, right? I'm not like blindly taking these risks. So that's what
Yes,
these
sir.
are the two big moments, I would say.
And sir, you also have a certification by the National Academy of Sports Medicine. So,
Correct.
how did you get this certification, and like what was the process? How long was the course?
Yeah, yeah. So back in like the IT time itself, I started working out. Like I said, we used to stand in front of the gym, and if you look at the mirror, you'd only see your chest and your bicep. So I started working out only for those muscle groups. All right,
Right.
and then the injury happened, but I still could not train certain exercises and things like that. That's when it struck me. I gotta like really learn a lot more about training methodologies, right? So and if I really want to help people on the floor or be someone, I gotta like learn the craft of it and the science behind it, right? So that is when I felt I gotta like pursue a kind of a degree or kind of a. I thought of degrees and all for sure, right? So a part-time degree, all of that, but a person who has like gained 5 to 6 years of experience, it's pretty hard to get into a college and do those things, right? So that's when I figured out why not certifications. I just did a Google search of like best certification in the world, right? So five of them popped up, but I chose national and the NASM CPT, very specific, because that I had this injury and they focused a lot more on a injury background, all right?
Okay.
Training people with a lot of injuries
Exactly.
and all
Yeah.
of that, right? So, and specifically, they had this model. Their entire company and the certification is built from a physical therapy background, all right? So that's when I felt okay, this might really help me in clarifying all my questions around injury, work, how to train, work around the injuries, and that's why I chose this. And just to what are the requirements is basically that you just need a high school degree. That's good to go for the certification. Apart from that, you gotta do the CPR and AED, we call it, right? So on the floor, if someone has a cardiac arrest, how do you kind of revive them through like if you have seen the movies, they would have taken this
Right.
thing and put it on. So that thing, right? So that certification you gotta do it. That's all. This is the requirement for it. And the duration is basically that once you buy the certification, you have to finish it within 6 months. All right.
Okay.
So within
Okay.
6 months, you got to prepare for it. It's basically a PDF you'll get like 500 page long. Something I felt like I was doing something different, but it was damn interesting because you get to learn a lot about physiology, about the basics of everything. I would say it was kind of really awakening for me, I would say, right? So it really helped me, and yeah, I mean, and the best part about it is that you have to keep renewing it every 2 years. Okay,
Oh,
so you
okay.
have to, yeah, have a continuous CUs, we call it. So you have to keep upgrading yourself by doing other certifications around the world. So that's why I kind of liked it, and that's just the training side of it, CPT. But after that, I kind of explored a lot more areas in terms of nutrition. So one other certification which I'm proud of is precision nutrition. So that again is cutting edge. It's really good. A lot I learned in nutrition too. So these two kind of helped me to get into the field very easily, I would say.
So, sir, like the very common topics that are revolving right now are the pandemic, right? And as you said, your injury was a big inspiration for Harry's FMS as well, right? You said the food habits that you adapted right now were a big inspiration. So, like, what sort of a food lifestyle can we adopt during the pandemic while we're at our home, right? So what can we do to live a more sustainable lifestyle?
Yeah. So pandemic is a very challenging time. I mean, we've not seen this before, right? So in our lifetime, at least, people who are alive now, right? So the key part is the most important part is you got to like not put yourself for achieving certain goals. Let's say if you want to lose fat, or you want to like, I'm talking about regular people and people like you and me, right? So like when I say that general public is what I'm addressing to. Okay, so when I talk about them, the most important part is like you try to tend to do exercise, you want to like eat proper and all of that. With all the things around it, psychologically that's pretty hard on you to kind of put those restrictions on top of what is happening around you. So that's kind of a paradox, I would call it. You would want to exercise, you want to take care of yourself, you have so much time, but the things around you doesn't allow you to do that, right? So I would just clearly say that like look for a very simple goal, right? So it could be like maintaining your current lifestyle or weight, whatever you are at. If you want to lose weight, I feel that this is not the time to experiment that, right? So probably you should have a very simpler goal, and that simpler goal, when I can break it down into nutrition and training, can be pretty simple, right? So you just have to start portion sizing your meals. That would be the easiest tip that I can give, right? So you gotta like eat a couple of meals at right times because you're there at home, right? So you should probably aim for like 4 to 5 balanced meals at, at regular intervals, so that you have that energy going in and you're not thinking about food a lot, right? That's one side of nutrition. So in the plate, if you look at what should be in the plate, right, the easiest would be like a carbohydrates. Use hand portion size or katoris and spoons, whatever you have, right? So just start eating the same amount of food on a daily basis, right? And the
Right.
snack can be little planned, I would say, right? Fruits and things like that, which gives like a lot more fibers over there. Those are simple things to do on nutrition front. Don't complicate
True.
it, right? So yeah, if you're an athlete and things like that, that's totally different, right? So I mean, you probably would have learned the basics of nutrition, so that's fine. So we're talking about general people. So that is very simplistically about the nutrition side. But training side, aim for 30 to 40 minutes to 4 to 5 times a week. Do something. That's it, right? So do
Right.
something. It can be dancing. It can be like going for a walk. So just put on YouTube. Try to do like 10% of the exercise that the person doing in front of you. So all of things works, right? So after that, that's where the coaching and coaches come in picture, right? So if you're
Yeah.
struggling, talk to a coach, talk about your exact problems, and probably you can work with that person to solve the exact issue that you are going through, right? So that would be the
So,
easiest way.
yeah. So, as far as the coaching perspective is concerned, so how big is the role of the trainer in that transformation that you're talking about? Like, what is the role of him, and like, how much does he cater to individual needs? Right? How do you address the individual's problems?
Correct. Asking more questions, right? So I just asked a lot of questions. I make them fill a bunch of forms, right? So first of all, they should know their why behind. At least when they come to me, then I ask a lot of questions. That's what is all coaching I felt, right? So that's what I
Right.
learned as a teacher also. Like how do you ask better questions to learn what is the exact problem that the person is going through, and devise a plan and build habits around it, right? So very
Right.
simply, let's say a person wants to lose weight. Okay, the first question would be, what have you done before, right? They would have done like enough things, and did that work? Why didn't it work, right? So
True. Very
do you
true.
want to try this, right? You want to try this. So it starts with a simple question, and after that, obviously there's a template, I would say, right? So there is a list of habits that a person needs to follow in terms of nutrition, training, all of that. That I have as a checkbox would be, right? But
Wow.
I allocate those habits very specific to that person in front of me, right? But most of the nutrition habits starts with eating slow. Okay, that's the number one thing I work on. If you ask me what is the first immediate habit that you ask me to build in terms of nutrition, eat slow, observe what you are eating, right? Take 15 to 20 minutes, chew and eat, understand what you're eating. Just building awareness around the nutrition, training, and probably like you walk out of the program just understanding yourself better, what suits you better, and all of that. That's kind of how it goes about.
Okay. So, sir, like, what is the current situation of a career in sports as far as India is concerned? Like, for example, did you have the pressure of having another job along with your career, along with Harry's FMS, or like, what are the obstacles in that sort of a way?
Yeah, so that's a very deeper question to answer, all right? So if you look at it, did the IPL get shut? Still getting played. So
Yeah,
cricket, yeah, I mean, look at it, right? So cricket is something very famous in India. You have the resources, people will make sure that things keeps going forward without any
right.
obstacle, right? So coming back to that, like it depends on which sport that you want to get into, right?
Hmm.
So do you have the infrastructure for it? Do you have the resources? Do you have the good coaches who are doing those things? So it all depends on that basic root level things, I feel, right? So take
Right.
football for example. It's good that the ISL has come in now. Probably in 10 years down the line, slowly things will ramp up down from the ground level. A lot more attention will go into the football. So that's where I feel the key challenges. And in India specifically, if you look at it like our college drafting and things like that, look at NBA, how do they draft people? College
Hmm.
starts from like college, right? You got to be like
Right.
good at your 4 year college, and then they draft you directly into NBAs, right? That's something crazy.
True. True.
Imagine
Yeah.
the resources and people around those things, right? So that's what is the missing link. I feel once people, and that's where these Gopi Chand and people like these people, Abhinav Bindra, the Shutu, all of them are actually coming out and they're setting up a good place to
Yeah.
train the people around. So I guess those are the people who are doing the right work. And the more these type of sports specific coaching and infrastructure and even the branding and all of that, okay, I mean that's very key, right? So you should get a sponsorship. It revolves around sponsorship, right? So if you have the right sponsorship, then you get to actually play that sport without physical problem of finance coming on the
Pressure.
background,
Right. Right.
right? So apart from that, one other thing is basically getting a parallel job. Like we do offer, like in the railways, all the central government jobs are there for athletes. Those are
Yeah.
good, but yeah, again, it is something that an athlete has to choose the right sport to see how he can shape his future.
So, in your opinion, should he keep a backup ready, or are we? Is the industry mature enough for us to directly go and get established in it?
Right. So if you want to get into sport, I guess the key part is you should have started probably at the age of 6 and 7, right? So that itself is something very very challenging, right? It starts from that age. I feel the people who are really good at that sport, they start from very early age, like starting from 5. And nowadays there is a very strict plan. Okay, a kid who wants to get into, let's say, football, you can start. There is a program right from grade 5, like we do it for IIT, right?
Right. Right.
IIT
Yes, sir.
coachings
Yes.
and things like that. Similarly, we have something for sport,
You
which
do.
is
Yes.
amazing, right? So a kid who goes into 5 years of age, he should have this strength level. He should specifically train for these things. By age 15, that person has enough maturity to kind of like become really good at its sport, right? If that is happening, I'm pretty sure you're at a really good place. You would have figured out a lot. Your parents would have supported you to do that. But if you're trying to do it parallelly, later on you figure these things out, don't have the financial backing, then it becomes really challenging, I feel. That's when the alternate options has to be there. You got to like find out a job, right? So, and it becomes a little hard, I feel.
Okay. Okay. So, what about the parallel fields in sports? For example, sports marketing, fitness coaching, psychology, data analysts. What about these fields? For these fields also, would your answer be the same? And how big a factor does an individual, like, should he be really good at his sport to finally reach these industries? Like, is that a very big factor, or are people now adopting the sports industry without having ever played or having been really good at their sport?
Right. So coaching is something which you can really build a passion over time, right?
Right.
So most of the football managers do it. They're not like top-notch footballers actually, right? So
Very
they
agree.
were playing for sure, but they were not like leading sports persons, right? So probably you develop the skill of coaching over time, which is totally possible, I feel, right? Again, that depends on like, do you have that kind of like schools where you go and learn those coaching ideologies and things like that. That is one side of it. But the other areas which you talked about, I guess it all boils down to skills. Okay, so okay, obviously I want to be really good at let's say cricket. Obviously, I will keep let's say 80, like if you're working for 80 hours in a week or 40 hours, let's say. Okay, so 40 hours should be your 88 hours of work. You might focus on a desk job, and the rest of the time you are pushing your limits to learn or keep up the skills that you are currently pursuing in your sport. The
Very
other
true.
8 hours is basically that how do you want to learn some skills. It can be related to sport, it may not be related to sport, right? So probably that's what you should inspire and like look for to, right? And once you're done career, if you felt that okay, I cannot pursue this, it's challenging, or you came up with an injury, right? You cannot pursue the sport, then there's a very good chance of you becoming a coach, right? That's an easier
Right.
route, I would say, right? Because you know that sport, you might have trained yourself, and you would have worked with people around you, so automatically you have a better chance of becoming a coach, right? So that's
Very
how
true.
I see.
That's right. That's very true, sir. So there are a lot of Indian colleges to get such sports degrees. Like for example, whether it be in and like what are some of the best colleges to obtain such sports degrees at?
Yeah. So you're talking about how to become a coach, or
How to
into as
become
an
a
athlete,
coach? Yeah,
not
any
as an athlete,
sports.
right? Probably.
Right, right. Yeah.
Okay. So let's forget about the athlete side of it. Let's say I as a person want to get into the industry of sports. Okay, after undergraduation, whatever, right? Or how to find an undergraduation first of all into the sports
Right.
itself. So that is
Exactly.
pretty. We have a lot more engineering colleges than obviously any other field, right? Laws and
Exactly.
doctors. These are the things which is promoted in India, right? So it is pretty hard to find those colleges. I'm not saying they are not there, they are there. But again, it goes back to how much research into that sport that you are doing. Let's say you want to find a career in nutrition. All right. So let's take an example
Yeah.
for that. Okay. Let's say everything revolves around doing research about food, right? And what
Right.
is so research papers and all of those. So not many colleges are cutting edge in doing the research around nutrition or being training, right? So I feel that, right? But in US or any other countries, developed countries where there is sport a lot more there, all these colleges have really good courses, right? So it starts with there are many things like there are so many courses that a person can really pursue, and it is not looked down, right? So if you pursue those
True.
courses, if I go and say that I'm a trainer, that's it, right? So after NIT
Nobody.
as a
Yeah.
trainer, yeah, nobody will even know like what is that in our current India's context. So I feel that there are much better opportunities outside. Um, yeah. So and in the future, I feel all these degrees and all is going to fade away, right? So I don't think so. People are going to look for degrees and things like that in the future. Like Google says, you can become a Google engineer if you have the right skills. So probably I
Right.
would say like enough knowledge is there, right? So on the internet there is enough knowledge. If you're really passionate about something, I'm pretty sure you'll find the right routes. Just find a good mentor in that field. You can just reach out to someone on the Instagram who is really doing something passionate, and you can
Right.
just talk to him over time, just learn everything with him rather than going for degrees, also possible.
True. True. Sir, like, what do you suggest NIT Trichy should do as a college to like promote the sports culture, to inculcate certain values in our sportsmen, so that they can later on go in life and pursue a career in sports? What changes do you feel can we bring about in our college?
I guess just push more sports, like get more people. I know they have sports quota, all of that, but once they come in, like the ecosystem, create the ecosystem is what I would say, right? So let's say if a person who's already coming in, if he has an interest in bodybuilding, like what are the resources that person can actually go and start learning about. Need not be the, I mean, the at least the sports division in this college can probably navigate the kids to the right resources. That's a good start, I would say. And then just create that ecosystem. Then I mean, it has to go across NITs, across IITs. It has to go
Right.
across colleges, I would say. So that's when things will get better. But yeah, the simplest would be is to navigate, have the right resources, and navigate the people who are interested into that field. Well, that's good enough start, I would say, and then build it on later on.
So, sir, like you took the example of bodybuilding. Now, in the current scenario, a lot of athletes like they started training, right? When the situation got slightly better, they started training back, like they got back to training. But again, now they would have faced a setback, right? So, how important a role does nutrition play over here? Can nutrition overcome the like the deficits of not being able to perform, like not being able to actually play the sport. So can
Right.
nutrition overcome those things, or is are both necessary, like as far as
Right.
keeping your performance levels up?
Yeah. So if you're talking about an athlete as a bodybuilder, I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure nutrition plays, obviously everything plays 100% for him. Sleep matters,
Okay.
100% he has to sleep better, 100% he has to
Mhm.
train, 100% he has to be good at nutrition, right? So
Okay.
that's when you're gonna like sustain the results what you have been doing before pandemic, right? So how do you do it? You just build good habits around you, probably work with a coach. If at all you're working, that's a good thing. It's always
Mhm.
have good to work with someone to understand. And most of the people, like the athletes, the biggest problem that they face is that the psychological side of it actually goes down because they are not
Right.
able to go out to the gym to kind of train the way they want or meet people or compete in stages. All of those things are shut at this point, right? So probably work with a coach is number one thing. Other than that, I mean, you should, if you're an athlete, you would have had a very good solid base in terms of like what nutrition is when you're at home or anywhere, right? So, and training is not a problem I see. Competing is a little harder.
Okay.
You need to have your own set of equipments, areas, and things like that. But I feel that you can maintain your body for sure, right? So
Okay.
competing is something is little challenging. So you need to set up a really good gym, is what I feel, to hit the right
Right.
muscle groups and keep that stimulus going on for a bodybuilder to compete, right? And the simplest idea is this also. Okay, the thing that you see on a bodybuilder stage when they stand on a stage is totally different after the post kind of the stage prep. Okay, there is
Right.
a kind of a periodization we call it. Okay, so they
Mhm.
get into those phases of training. So after the training comes out, they kind of put on some fat and things like that. So probably this is the time they can take off, kind of like forget it off, just maintain that muscle or build it
Mhm.
slowly. And when the next kind of championship happens, they kind of shred their fat over the body and then kind of
Right.
stand on the stage. Right, so it actually depends on the sport. So this is just bodybuilding as an example. But yeah, if you look at cricket, obviously there are good resources. Like if you look at all these players, they travel to these stadiums, it is quarantine, still they kind of train. So that's how they keep
Mhm.
up things. So it totally depends on the sport too.
True. True. So, sir, do you feel that this pandemic will lead to like a generation of individuals whose level is not the same as the ones before them? Like, do you feel, for example, like the upcoming Olympics, right? Do you feel the performance levels are going to be lesser than what they were before because athletes haven't gotten the right time to train?
Yeah. So it depends again from like when since you're talking about Olympics, it's
Mhm.
all country to country, right? So the people who are going to tackle pandemic better and they start
Mhm.
training back and things like that might have a better chance of competing and doing faring well in the Olympics. Right? If you
Okay.
look at US, obviously they have weightlifting. They're really good at weightlifting and all of those categories. Certain
Right.
categories which they are really good at. Right? So
Mhm.
if I've been following a couple of them, and they have been continuously training. Nothing shut them off from actually training, right? So because that robust support system is there around them, so they're gonna keep doing that better, right? So or any country for that matter, right? So they might do fare well, but the countries who are suffering and actual lockdowns are going on, and a lot more environmental issues happening around you. The brain is not at the right place to do things,
Mhm.
so they might struggle a bit, and then they have to recoup, come back again. To answer it simply, yeah, I mean, people who have tackled the pandemic in a better way might have a
Mhm.
better chance at
Better
forthcoming
chance.
Olympics.
So I would like to make a request to all those watching over here that if you have any question, you can type it out in the comment section. We'll obviously.
All right, so I guess we've been talking for a very long time. Let's kind of do a breathing and stretching exercise. All right,
Sure, sure,
so I'm
definitely.
gonna do
Yeah.
a yeah. So I'm gonna do it like whoever is watching, right? So kind of let's try this out. The entire day we are on in the computer, sitting in front of it. Most of
Yeah.
the muscles kind of like stupid inside. So the easiest one to stretch is your chest muscle. The easiest
Hmm.
workout, which I can probably tell you, is taking
Okay.
your hand and try to
Hmm.
reach as much as at the back and
Okay.
try to breathe deep. All right. So most of the people, when they do this, they are running out of breath. Right. You gotta like stretch this thing out. Your pecs. These are the chest muscle. That's what we call it fancily pecs. All right. So
Hmm.
so you kind of like open this up and hang around for let's say 30 to 40 seconds. All right, so you could probably do this and this. I hope people are doing it. So yeah, let's
Let me
get the blood
follow once.
flowing a bit. Right, so can I open this up? The the better you are able to push it at the back, you have a better flexibility. So don't worry about the flexibility part. That's okay. Whatever you can actually do it, just do it. Take a good 30 to 40 seconds of like pause and then do it throughout the day is what I would say. And the other one is basically your hip muscle. Okay, it kind of runs from your core to your quadriceps, this entire thigh. All right, so an easier stretch would be is to just put one leg on the chair and just lean forward. Right, so the easiest is to put your leg on the chair and just lean forward, and you should feel a good stretch on the leg or the back.
Right.
All right, so probably let's try this out, and you're gonna hold the breath. If you hold the breath for too long, then the actual muscle will not get the oxygen to actually relax. That's why I generally breathe deep, take a deep breath, and kind of stretch out the muscles around at least your chest and your thighs. All right, so probably these are the two easy ones you can try it out at home. Between your test times, you can actually try these out throughout the day. All right, so
I'm just
something.
trying them out right now.
All right. So yeah, I mean, we keep saying core tight. I mean, if you really don't understand it, there's a very quick method to kind of understand what is a core tightening means. All right. People keep getting confused. Core tightening should I hold the breath, right? So the easiest is to put your hand in the front and ask your friend or someone to push from the side. The minute you're resisting the push, you should feel your tummy getting stiffer. Okay, that is something related to core tightening. That over time you kind of like get good at it. So these three things are kind of like important when you're training, and some stretching is always good, and breathing deep is something really nice. All right. So let's go ahead with the next question.
So, sir, how do you feel that sportsmen can mentally prepare to face the setbacks? For example, the pandemic setbacks or any sort of injury setbacks.
Right. So
How?
what?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it totally depends on again what stage of the career you are in and what are your aspirations. Where do you want to compete? Which sport are you in? So keeping all of those in context. Again, like if you take cricketers, they have amazing coaches around. They have like mental coach, physical coach. Like you have all the coaches around them to kind of guide them through these challenging times too, right? So that's something again which sport you are belonging to, and how do you do it? It's a skill that you got to like learn over time, right? So how mentally tough you are, all of that belongs to like how do you kind of develop as a person, right? And what sport are you trying to compete to? So simply to say mentally and physically both go hand in hand, right? You got to like really focus on your stress levels and all of those, and stress is at really sky roof at this point. So you really have to manage those things. So again, like books will help, right? So and as a coach, if you're working with a coach, they might have really good strategies to actually relieve your stress out and like really focus on the things that matter to you, right? So control what you can control is what we keep saying, right? So that it stands true. And yeah, if you have any specific thing on in terms of like any specific sport and a person, how should he deal with it? We can get in deeper.
Sure, sir, sure. So, like, this is something very common that I've observed. Some people who go to the gym, they take a pre-workout nutrition, right? Some focus on the post-workout nutrition. So, is there a universal standard for it, or does it vary from like person to person and how it suits their body? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's a very good question, right? So people are really confused about nutrition, I would say, because there is enough information on the internet to asking you
Exactly.
to do this, do that, and all of that, right? So, but it all comes down to basics, and there is a hierarchy to kind of do things in terms of nutrition. When it comes to pre-workout, post-workouts, like are you an athlete? Then there is a different kind of a regime that you need to focus on, right? But if you're a general public, you need a different kind of. You don't probably need intra like pre-workout, post-workout, all of those things, right? But let's take an example of a bodybuilder, and let's take an example of a person like a student like you. Okay, so let's take a bodybuilder. Obviously, So whenever he's going to workout is going to cause a lot of stress in his muscles, right? So there is a breakdown happening. So in order to support his training, he would need a lot more glucose in his body. So a pre-workout would be more on mental focus, which is caffeine in it, right? And a little bit of it depends, right? If he's going to train more than 45 minutes, more than an hour, then probably he can have a carbohydrate drink during the workout also, or before the workout. He can place his meals before the workout, right? And the protein also, right? So during the workout also, muscle protein synthesis we call it, right? So you tend to build muscle and break down the tissues. So you tend to have a good protein meal before the workout also helps. So all these stands true. And post workout also for him, there's a window in which you kind of get amazing response when you're having enough protein and a carbohydrate rich meal, right? So that helps for a bodybuilder. Now let's talk about general public. Okay, let's say they've been training, they're training 3 to 4 times a week, right? That's too little volume for it. And for that purpose, the first key thing is, are you eating enough throughout the day? That's all that matters. And first of all, there's a hierarchy, like I said. Are you sustainably eating those things? Are you happy about those things that you're eating? And second comes the macronutrients, we call it, right? So the protein, the fats, and all of those things come later for him, right? So is he better at the portion sizing and all of that? Throughout the day, consumption matters more than actually focusing on a specific before workout or a post workout, all of that. So the easiest would be, generally people take whey shakes. Okay, so that's what most of them call it, right? So post workout, I gotta have the shake, right? I don't know where did that come from. It is true, like I told you, bodybuilding, the entire fitness industry, if you look at it, like it's all driven by bodybuilders telling advices to people, right? For a bodybuilder, obviously, you come out of the training, you need that protein, right? But for a regular person, if he's not eating enough protein throughout the day, it doesn't matter post workout if he consumes a whey or not, right? So the first hierarchy is, are you hitting the protein numbers throughout the day? Then comes, once you're good with that, you have understood a basic nutrition tactics, then you can place it later on, right? So, but yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong in consuming whey. There's nothing wrong having it later, but you should know why you are doing it and what is the purpose of it, right? Am I hitting my protein numbers throughout the day? And this is helping me to probably catch up my protein numbers throughout the day for building muscle. Is something the person needs to be clear about. So it depends on the context, for sure. And endurance sports and all, you don't need that much protein for sure. Okay, we are talking about bodybuilders; they need a lot more protein, but an endurance athlete doesn't need that much more of protein as compared to a regular bodybuilder, is what I would say. So it depends from person to person.
Right. So, like, do you feel like as Indians, are we in any way genetically inferior to other countries? For example, we were speaking about America being really good at wrestling. Apart from the fact that they have really good infrastructure and a really good support system, do you somewhere feel that genetically also we're not at the same level? Like they have more like some say, right, that ratio of talent versus hard work. So can you say that they have more skill, they have more innate skill than us?
Very good question. So you look at a bodybuilder, the first thing you comment saying, what do you generally say? He has taken steroids, right? So people generally say things which is pretty hard. Like generally, that's what our human mind generally looks when you look at some person. You kind of look at the easy route for it. But I would say, first of all, focus on your training, right? So training matters. The other ecosystem around that sport matters a lot more. And when you're talking about Olympic winning gold medals, that is when the genetics matter, I would say, right? They are talking about 0.1, if you look at the races, we are talking about like in milliseconds, right? So that time is where the genetics actually come in picture, I feel, right? Until that time, if you're there in the Olympics, you should have trained hard, right? So you should do all the hard work, put the hard work and reach that stage, and then probably you can start blaming the genetics and things like that. As an athlete, for an external person, I guess that's a problem. People still keep blaming and they try to push them down. So yeah, I mean, kind of like athletes should ignore the people around them trying to push them down, rather focus on the hard work and things of it. I would say 99% focus on your way of training, methodologies, coaching, all of that. and that 1% might be genetics and things like that for sure. I don't deny that. Right, so yeah, obviously, if you look at it, Michael Phelps has a bigger lats. This back muscle is too humongous for him. His structure really helped him to swim better than someone
Better.
next to him. Yeah.
Makes sense. That makes sense. So, sir, do you feel that we should start training at a very early age? Some people, on the other hand, say that when you start training at an early age, there are certain side effects that you'll have later on in life. So there's like probably after 21, after 18 is where you should start. But nowadays we're seeing a lot of people who are starting at a very young age, and that's helping them like build better, right? Grow better in terms of their muscles or in terms of their body. So what do you feel is the right age to start at? And is there a factor? Is there such a factor?
Yeah, yeah. So enough research has gone into this, all right. So the sooner you start as a baby, you just start lifting weights. It's good for you. I mean, you start. I mean, most of the clients who I coach, who I work with, most of their dumbbells are lying around. Now that they are working out at home, their kids come around and carry the dumbbells, and they are so happy lifting those weights, and they are trying those things. So I would say you can start from the early age. Obviously, there is a way to train, like I told you. I mean, you gotta like know how to train properly. There is a way, technique, and all of that. But those things come later when you're trying to compete and things like that. Okay, but in the initial stage, you being active, lifting here and there stuff, should actually tension your bones, muscles, and all of that. The sooner you start, it is better. And yeah, I mean, lifting weights causes stunted growth. No, that's not true.
Yeah.
All right, so. Those are all gone. You shouldn't like really believe that is what I feel, because there is enough research around these things. The sooner you start, it's good. And yeah, just to close it off, the base strength is what I would call it. A person needs to, let's say, an endurance sport. A person needs to have this amount of base strength to train for that. So that base strength can be transferable to sports. All right. So that base strength, let's say, when I call that base strength, it could be just sitting and doing squats, couple of squats, like doing push-ups, pull-ups, and all of that. That type of structured program around exercise, around strength and conditioning is really good for kids right from the starting, like from the, let's say, they start crawling or like start walking, right? So walking is a good time. Like crawling, obviously, it's not. Right, so walking is a good time to start asking them to like do some kind of physical activity and build that strength, and then keep growing from there is what I would say.
Makes sense, sir. So, sir, how important is it to like take supplements? Do you personally feel that is our Indian diet enough in terms of the amount of proteins or the carbs that we take on a daily basis? Do you feel that it's enough, or do you feel that we need to take supplements it's very very necessary for us?
Sure.
Not just like as a bodybuilder, but as a day-to-day individual as well.
Right. So before going to that, let me ask you a simple kind of a quiz. Right. So from there we'll get into this answer. Right. So
Perfect.
it is pretty connected, I would say. So people who are like watching, so can you type out? Let's say you're having a burger. It gives you some energy. So we have some kind of a unit of measurement for it. Right. So what is that called? It starts with a C. Right. So what is that called? Is what I would ask. And what are the components in a calorie? Oh shit, I said the answer. All right. Now let's go into, so the unit is called as calorie. All right.
Okay.
Now how is the calorie getting measured? How do you come up with a calorie is what I would ask. So if anyone at home know the answer for it, there are 3 components to it. Why don't you tell me the components? And if you can simply put a formula in the comment section, that'll be really good. You can write the components and write the formula how a calorie is calculated. So energy is calorie. So how a calorie is calculated. So I'll wait for 10 seconds. So a simple formula to calculate a calorie. Let's say you had a burger. So we keep seeing 500 calories, 600 calories, right? So if you go to, so how does that get calculated? All right, that's okay. So let's go ahead to the answer. So generally it has fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. So each of them provides certain energy. So when you multiply 4 times your carbohydrates and proteins, you get certain energy out of it. So that's like when you multiply that, whatever components is there in the food, let's say it has certain fats, it has certain carbohydrates, has certain proteins, you multiply 4 into 4, like you kind of like do that math and you derive the actual calorie count. So fat has 2 times the energy uh, of a protein and a carbohydrate, right? So it has nine, yeah. So it has 2 times of protein and a carbohydrate, right? So generally, that's why we call it like fat is dense, and like we are fat shaming people, or like say fat is as a term, we kind of like have a negative connotation to that, right? So coming back to your question, right? So about the protein numbers, let's talk about the protein numbers and let's talk about the supplement. So let's say if you are a strength athlete, you want to build muscle and all of that, there is a number that you can actually multiply and figure out your protein number required for that day. All right. So a general public for general people, 1.6 times is what your body weight is generally a good number to start off with. Okay.
Body weight
so
in kgs.
in kgs. 1.6 times your body weight, if you kind of calculate it, so that many grams of protein per day is a very good number for general public. All right. So these numbers are generally given by the standards around the world. Right. So that is for protein. Similarly, we have for carbohydrates and fats minimal numbers. This is not a minimal number. This is basically for a good healthy living. Right. So similarly, 0.8 times is the bare minimum that they ask for you to generally eat. 0.8 times is a very good number at the bottommost range. Okay. That's what is about the protein numbers. So when you calculate these numbers, if you're already hitting for your goals, then you shouldn't worry about taking supplements. For example, let's say a 100 kg individual wants to kind of start training, wants to build muscle. 1.6 times is basically 160, right? So let's say 160 grams of protein he should probably eat an entire day. If he is able to consume that protein through his regular meals, then you don't need a supplement, right? So let's say if you're eating enough like dal, whatever, right? So whatever you are eating in that meal itself, you are able to catch up your protein numbers, then you are sorted. You don't need a supplement. All right. Similarly, right? So that's just a whey example, whey protein. So if you're short, obviously whey is a really good option. If you know how a whey is made, paneer, when you take paneer, the water that comes out of it, you kind of make a powder out of it. That is whey. All right. So it has been researched enough about whey, and people consume it. Most of the athletes consume it because it's easy and convenient to hit your protein numbers throughout the day. Okay. So for convenience purpose, supplements really help. But if you're able to consume it through your whole foods, no need for any supplements. All right. So next example would be your fish oil. Okay, omega-3 we call it. All right. So similarly, if you are a fish eater, if you've been eating 100 to 200 grams of fish every day, you don't need it. Right. So omega-3 has a significant good health benefits in your body. But if you're not a eater of those food or fish itself, and that to deep sea fish and things like that, okay, sea fish is much better in omega-3. So if you're not consuming those things, probably a supplement is a good option. But again, it depends on what sport. For that sport, is this required? So, but yeah, I mean, general public, I would say it's not required. You should not run behind supplements, rather focus on more nutritious, balanced food and things like that.
Perfect, sir. So I guess now we can move to the audience questions. We have significant amount of questions that people have asked.
Yeah.
So the first question by Pranesh Ram is that how do we make training sustainable, as most of us tend to wear off after a few days of training workout?
Right. So it boils down to what is your goals in terms of training. Right. So when you look at that, let's say if Pranesh Ram can like exactly say what is he trying to achieve in terms of training, I can probably go specific into that. Else, let's take an example of, let's say I want to probably start exercising starting tomorrow, right? So, and in the previous time I have done a couple of runs, I've done some weight training and all of that. How do I proceed, right? So first of all, basically build the habit of coming back to training 3 to 4 times, right? So first choose the method of training which is joyful for you, right? So you ran, you did some kind of strength training. What did you like about it? Which one were you kind of like liking it more than the other? Is something that you should first think of, right? If you've determined that, then the next step is basically doing that at a slower pace. Beginning that, consistency matters a lot more than anything else. So start with the basic, right? So if it comes to strength training, start with one set of certain exercises. 15 to 20 minutes is totally fine, right? So you build that up and slowly design something. Like you either watch over the internet, learn more, and design, and slowly ramp it up according to your goals, right? So
Okay.
basic thing boils down to is consistency and joy. Okay, if you're not going to enjoy what you're doing, there is no way that you're going to like do it for a very long time, right? So that is the first question that I ask people, right? So what do you like? What have you tried before? What did you like the most? And what is very easy to start, right? Start that first, and probably start following people, build a community around it, join some running groups if you like running, right? All of those accountability things comes later. But yeah, that's what I would say. Hopefully that answered it.
So, what can be done to preserve muscles at home? A question by Hari Prasad.
Right. So there is something concept called as a volume. I'm going to very easily explain it. So let's say you did an exercise before pandemic. You went to a gym. You did 4 sets of like you did 5 exercises, 2 sets of each, and you lifted for certain repetitions, right? So and you lifted certain amount of weight. You
Right.
calculate that. Okay, so that is your volume. You just multiply each of these terms and determine some number, or just
Okay.
understand that I did this much before my pandemic. Okay, that has helped you to build certain number of certain muscle. If you have been eating enough protein and all of that, if you have really good solid understanding about protein numbers, and you have mastered that, and you know that your training volume is this, that you know that you have done this much before pandemic and you lifted this much weight, then what you do is kind of match that up at home. How do you do it? You don't have weights, so what do? You increase the repetitions. All right. So, for example, let's say you did 3 sets of squats with, let's say, 10 kgs each. Okay. So you don't have a 10 kg dumbbell at home. So you gotta catch up the same volume, that is sets into rep into weight, that you need to
Okay.
catch up at home. How do you do it? You do more repetitions of the squat, right? Consider as, let's say you have a 5 kg dumbbell, instead of a 10 kg, you do 2 times the repetitions that you
Two
did.
times the
So
repetitions.
basically,
Okay.
yeah, right? So that way, when you do it, you are getting the same stimulus for the muscle in your at your home also, right? So that way, you have a chance to preserve your muscle. You can maintain it, and there is something like deeper concept. Probably you can connect offline. There is something called as minimum training volume, which is required to preserve any muscle that you currently have, right? So that minimum training stimulus is also something that you can probably develop over time. That's a formula for it. That's where the people who are like good at this will help you to hit that minimum training volume and still maintain the muscle or whatever you're trying to achieve,
Wow. Okay.
right? Hopefully that answered.
Yeah. So, what can one do to quickly regain fitness after an injury or some disease, for example, COVID?
Yeah,
A question from
good. So
Sanjay R. Yeah.
yeah, let's take my example, right? So
Mhm.
before pandemic, the gyms were open. I started working out, right? So I was really good at it, right? I was lifting the way before post pandemic time. I kind of like was able to get to those numbers in terms of my strength, whatever, right? So that was pretty much possible when I came to Bangalore. So I am from Pune. Actually, I traveled to Bangalore. I got COVID, and like it's been like a month now. So I took complete bed rest. I didn't work out because I didn't have the energy, is what I felt, right? So after 2 3 weeks, my body told, right? So you are recovering. Probably you should go for a walk, right? So let's be active. Let's go for a walk for a couple of days. For one more week, after 2 weeks of my quarantine, I started walking, right? So I felt that my energy levels are back. Obviously, you gotta like eat good amount of food to support your recovery and all of that. But as I started walking, I felt much better. My energy levels came back again. Then the next day, I started with one set of all the exercises. It was really, I was feeling really devastated in terms of that. Okay, I was gaining my strength, all of that, And that next week was really challenging for me to do the workout itself. I was kind of putting the mat. I went there, I did some stretches, I got out and felt, oh, let me do it tomorrow, right? So it is pretty hard. But yeah, just push that. Just put the mat. Just stand there,
Right.
do some stretches, get out of it, right? So then you will feel better. Then the next week you'll feel okay, I can do more. And then you start slowly. I guess then you start with 1 set, 2 sets, 3 sets, and slowly ramp it up. I mean, nothing, no magic in this, right? So just move your body slowly and steadily.
Perfect. So that's really good. So next we have a question by Srinivas. Speaking of fats, would switching to a ketogenic high fat diet actually help us burn more fat? Or is it better to take high fiber foods like everyone suggests?
Right. So keto, that's a fad. It's one of the diet strategies. I would say it's a diet. Obviously, I did keto for a long time. I lost like 10 kgs, but I was not able to sustain it. Right. So it
Okay.
all boils down to how can you sustain it. So keto diet is comprising. So if you know what is a keto diet, just for the clarification for people, it's a high fat diet in which you have good amount of protein. You basically cut down your carbohydrate intake to 20 or lesser for that day, 20 grams of carbohydrates or lesser for that day. Then people started thinking that what happened is basically that you start burning fat to actually support your physical systems, right? Basically your brain, your muscles. How did the energy start coming? Through burning the fat in your body, or you started consuming the fat which helps you to burn the fat. That's what the idea of ketogenic diet came in, right? So people started following it. And just to talk about a little more about ketogenic diet, obviously you cut out carbohydrates. So carbohydrates generally, if you look at it, rice is taken as a bad thing, okay? But if you look at it, generally if you go eat a pizza, it does have a lot of fats in it, it does have a lot of carbohydrates in it. So whenever you do a ketogenic diet, you end up cutting out all the food that are processed, right? So and your calorie intake just goes down a lot more. All right. So what happens is magically you feel that, oh, okay, I kind of like lost a bunch of kg. Oh, okay, it feels good, right? People are motivated to do it again and again. But scientifically, if you are eating X amount of calories or energy, you consume it through whole foods, or like he says, high fibrous foods. If it's you are able to manage your lifestyle, you're happy eating those foods, then you need not even measure your carbohydrates, your fats, nothing like that. Your calorie matters at the end of the day, right? So if you consume X amount of food with only ketogenic diet, let's say 2000 calories, and your body requires a lot more energy, that means you are in deficit. That means your body requires a lot more energy, but you are eating only 2000 calories. Okay, your body requires around, let's say, more than 2000 calories, right? So, but you are consuming that through, let's say, ketogenic food, or through
High
any
fiber.
other any
Yeah.
any diet with 2000, but depend on your goals, right? So I mean that goes to your goals, like, okay, are you eating enough protein to sustain your muscle and things like that? But end of the day, if you eat a deficit with the ketogenic diet or low carb diet or high carb diet, all of that, and if you're able to manage that for a very long time and still lose fat, that's the best diet for you. That's the best diet for you, right? So that's
Sure.
the important thing to kind of like understand.
Makes sense. So there's a question by Manikandan. Does building lat muscles help people who have problems with disc prolapse?
All right. So this is injury specific one, right? So it has a lot of context around it. Actually, if you're injured, the best possible thing to do is start doing the movements which doesn't pain at all.
Okay.
All right. So if you have an injury, start getting into the rhythm of working out and start understanding the pain. Which muscle, when you work out, does it pain? Work around those pain points. Let's say for lats, let's say you have a lower back disc problem. Okay, uh, deadlifts are still fine, because over time, deadlifts is something where you kind of like bend down and like you train your lower back. Okay, so there are modifications of deadlift itself to build your back or lats. There are certain modifications within the current workout that you can modify and still not feel the pain, you can train. All right. So that's where probably there is other questions that we probably want to discuss is, where does a physical trainer come in picture, right? So probably
Right.
he'll understand your injuries and derive a plan which works around the injuries, and still you are getting the stimulus out of it. So most
True.
of the
True.
bodybuilders will have some kind of injury or another, but they don't stop training. It's just that they figure out which are the exercises that causes the pain, and they kind of avoid it over time, and they become really aware of those movements, right? And that is where the physical therapists come in picture again, right? If a trainer cannot suffice that, automatically you refer to a physical therapist. That person will be doing the tests properly to understand the exact issue and which movements are better for you, and then slowly ramping it off. So basically, not doing workout is not an answer. Okay, the research is showing that again
Doing
and again. Yeah, I mean, minimal amount of pain, tolerable pain is still fine. Just work around the pain, but don't sit simply, because that has much negative effect than anything else. So just to answer this question, you can train your lat muscles, you can grow your lat muscles with the right workouts, which doesn't cause the problem of like increasing the pain for that specific area in your body. So
okay.
hopefully that should answer it for you.
So there's a question by Vaishnavi. Is being a vegan a healthier lifestyle than that of a non-vegetarian? I think this is very relevant in terms of that Netflix series also, Game Changers. So that essentially spoke about people who've shifted to a vegan lifestyle and are like having better performance after shifting to this lifestyle. So I have
Right.
another follow-up question to this as well, sir.
Sure.
In that they basically showed those people who had a meat-based diet but shifted to a vegan diet, right?
Hmm.
Can we say the
Yeah.
same about people who, from the beginning, have adopted a vegan diet? Do you think that like that meat-based diet or that protein-based diet initially is very important for the development of growth, and after that maybe they can go towards that vegan diet?
Right. So there are, yeah, I mean, it's one of the controversial topics to talk about, right? So it has a lot of nuances. The basic ideology comes back to, why do you want to follow a vegan diet, right? So is it because killing animals is bad and it's unethical, right? So is that the reason why do you want to switch to a like a vegan diet, or is it that the sustainable farming and things like that? If you really know about it, if you research a little more about this, obviously, right? So eating a man eating, like, I mean, if you look at it, the food chain is kind of like not that great when it comes to non-vegetarians, right? So you basically, cattle and the beefs is the most consumed thing in the world, right? So as a meat, okay. So if you look at it, you have to have a pasture land full of like cattle's grazing that. You have to like water that plants first, and they consume that, and from there you are consuming that. It's kind of an indirect chain of food source that
Cycle.
you're kind of consuming, kind of cycle, right? So it is not sustainable if you look at it in the future. So is that the reason? So there is a like two distinct reasons for you to become a vegan. Okay, so if both these answers strike to you, then both are fine. I would say, like, just follow whichever can you sustainably follow that. There is enough research which will keep coming, which will debunk the myth that, okay, like, there'll be people all or nothing mindset saying that, okay, vegan diet is the best, non-veg diet is the best, and things like that. And there are really good vegan bodybuilders, really good people. And if you consume the right minerals and things like that, the macronutrient is the question when it comes to a vegan. Okay, so generally that's the problem, and the protein numbers also is a problem. These are the two big topics that non-vegetarians, when they eat, have a better benefits of consuming better proteins and better macronutrients, they call it. But I think it's not true. Okay, if you can, and developed countries are really becoming really good at this, because in the future I foresee myself becoming a vegan for sure. That's because of the two reasons which I said. I strongly feel at this point I am not a vegan. I don't have around me restaurants. If I go out, my I get psyched if I want to eat a vegan food, right? So my
Right.
social life goes down, right? There aren't options. But if you go to a country where these things are ahead, they have lab cultured meat nowadays. They're coming in with it, right? So
Exactly.
dairy products taste like milk,
Plant-based. Yeah.
plant-based stuff, right? So I mean, you can actually culture meat at your lab. If those things are readily available and it is equivalent and it is sustainable and it is cheap for everyone to consume, then well and good. I will be the first to switch to a vegan diet, I would say. Right. So hopefully
Sure,
that
sir.
answers. Yeah.
So, one last question by Rahul. This is that since gyms are closed, what is the best workout routine at?
Cool. Just move your body for 30 to 40 minutes, 3 to 5 times a day. That is good. Start with something that you enjoy, right? So, and just build that up, right? So, get a bunch of, if you like strength training, you get a bunch of like dumbbells and resistance bands and start training at home. If you like running, run within the house. If you're not allowed to go step out, walk within the house, right? Go to a terrace if you have a private terrace, right? So do something for 30 to 40 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week. That's a good start. From there, you kind of like ramp things up and find, yeah. So all these live sessions, these things might motivate you if you join them with people doing it around you, right? So building a community around these things, asking a friend to join you, right? So these things, just see how you will do these things, right? So that is what best I could say.
So, we have a question by Mervin. What is a safe calorie deficit to maintain while cutting weight to avoid losing a lot of muscle? And how many weeks of this continuous deficit is sustainable till it starts affecting you negatively?
Perfect. Very good question. Okay. It's a pretty long one. Let me try to kind of like answer it in the shortest possible way. All right.
Sure,
So
sir.
it totally depends on the goal. Let's say if you want to, how lean you want to become, right? And what is your duration, right? So both of these factors a lot when you are actually planning for a deficit. Deficit is like eating below than to lose some fat, right? So eating below what your body requires to lose the fat. So if you talk about calorie numbers, 300 to 400 calories deficit is a good number. Okay, even 200 is good enough. That's what it totally depends on your pace at which you want to do it, right? And sustainably and sanely as an athlete. If you're an athlete, how can you do it sustainably, sanely for that period of time that you've set for yourself? Right? So you reverse plan that. Okay, so there are mathematical calculations roughly you can try it out in terms of losing fat percentage in your body. So all of that is possible. So what you do is basically you start off with 300 calories deficit. Look at the things around you. How long are you aspiring to do that? Then there are a couple of strategies come in picture. If you are, the more and more deficit you go, you have very little to eat. That's
Right.
psychologically not possible. Your body will not allow it, right? So it will defend it. So what you do is go for a break, psychological breaks. Okay, so then people started saying that your metabolism gets adjusted. That again, today people say that metabolism doesn't drastically change much. So rather focus on psychological factor and maintain that 300 deficit. If you want to do it at a decent pace, kind of keep doing that for a very long time until you are reaching that specific numbers. So these diet breaks help, but for the psychological side of it, but not really for the like if you're continuously doing it, that's well and fine, and you're training better. So you gotta, it all depends on everything, like the sleep, your training volume, your training methodologies, all of that matters. On top of your nutrition, all of these three things kind of go hand in hand, and you kind of like change these things over time, and whatever allows you to do it happily.
Perfect, sir. So, I guess that brings us to the end of this session. It was an honor having you. Thank you so much for answering all these questions, sir. We had a couple of very specific questions, and thank you so much for answering all of them.
Wow, it's really amazing to just talk to you guys, right? So, uh, I would say like the final part, right? So, I would be really honored to coach two of you guys, right? So, which you can probably release it, right? So, I'm open to coach two of you guys who are really into these things, or you want to just learn about fitness, nutrition, and all of that, right? So, I'll be
Wow.
really open to coach two of you for free, right? So yeah, just go to that specific programs, go to the website, look around, see if that matters to you, or you want to just simply learn something about nutrition and things like that over the 12 weeks of period of time. I'm open to like kind of take you and like coach you. So that's
Wow.
what I want to leave
So,
with you.
yeah, I feel that people who are here would definitely love to do this. So it's a 12-week program, and you're willing to coach two students for free. So I guess a lot of students can definitely take it up. So
Yeah,
that's brilliant.
yeah. Just
Sure,
go
sir.
out
Thank
and
you.
fill out. Yeah. So basically, go there and like fill out your goals. We'll get on a call and then we'll take it forward. Yeah, and I mean, finally, just to close it off, I would say like all the really. I mean, I feel that you should take time to explore what you really want to do over time,
Mhm.
and take it as a journey. I would say, and be open to learn, and over time you'll figure it out. Is what I can tell. All right. So be open to learn. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
It's
sir. It
great.
was a pleasure having you. Stay safe.
All right. Yeah,
Thank
you
you. Thank
guys
you.
do. Goodbye.
So that brings us to the end of the